We turn to the latest allegation against internet star Andrew Tate. Not because I care that much about the gossip about Andrew Tate, but because of the political implications. Headline, Andrew Tate told woman, I'm debating whether to you. Court papers allege. Claims by 4 women are filed at high court, including of coercive control and assault and battery. I don't think anyone is denying that Andrew Tate has said things like this and engaged in acts that look like this. There's this video of him, smacking a woman and screaming all sorts of things at her and branding them and with his tattoo of his name and saying all sorts of really disrespectful things like I own you, I'm going to you or whatever. There are all these. I don't think anyone, including Andrew Tate, denies that these things have been said. The defense of the Tate is that it's all just kind of kinky. It's all totally consensual. And in fairness, the woman who I guess made this allegation did go back and visit this guy for a long time afterward. So it wasn't like he was lurking in a dark alleyway or something. And, she kept going back and I guess was dating this guy or something like it. So I think that whole tit for tat totally misses the point here. One side says this man, when he was smacking women and saying he owns them and wants to rape them and wants to beat them, and that was an assault. And then the other side says, no. When Andrew Tate did all of those things, it was just consensual. It was like a kind of fun game. It was a role play. It was kinky. He was just expressing his, animalistic desires. And she was on board with it too. Even if she said she wasn't, she was cool with it. And the actual issue here is, regardless of consent or not, I mean, consent is a serious thing, but it's not the only criterion of morality. The deeper issue is one should not have these desires. Even if it was just like a kinky role-playing thing between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, I'm a little skeptical of that, but even if that's what it was, the boyfriend should not want to beat his girlfriend, even in a fantasy, even in a fun little role-playing game. The boyfriend should not be titillated by saying things like, I own you, by saying degrading things to his girlfriend, by putting his name as a tattoo on his girlfriend or hitting his girlfriend, or any of those things. That should not even be the sort of thing that one desires. Now, you can criticize Tate for all sorts of reasons. If, however, you actually want to criticize Tate in a coherent way, then you need to go all the way and say, okay, his very desires, regardless of whether or not these actions were consensual, his very desires are wrong and perverse and need to be changed. They need to be sublimated so that you take dark, low desires and sublimate them and point them in the right direction. That's what you need to say. But many of Andrew Tate's critics will not do that because that has implications for all other sorts of behaviors. There's so much more to say. First, though, go to expressvpn.com/Michael Knowles Show. The internet of the 90s promised a democratic virtual world where individuals, not governments or corporations, held power. Today, that vision seems distant. Big tech dominates our digital lives, with companies not just serving ads, but potentially influencing our political choices through controlled content delivery. In fact, definitely influencing our political choices. The original internet promised personal freedom and control over your information journey. There is a way to reclaim that control and freedom. It's ExpressVPN. When you browse the internet, your service provider tracks everything you do, building a profile that data brokers sell to advertisers and government agencies. This constant surveillance means we are being watched and manipulated online. With ExpressVPN, my entire online traffic flows through secure encrypted servers, preventing even the ISP from monitoring my activities. I can browse freely without surveillance. I've used ExpressVPN personally for years. And I'm kind of a Luddite, and they make it even so I can use it. Okay, you just download the app on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, boom, 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 click one button, you're on. Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below. We're going to expressvpn.com/Michael Knowles Show. If we are willing to establish that certain desires, certain sexual desires, are wrong and perverse and disordered, then we need to apply that evenly and across the board and say, well, okay, how about you check in on your own desires? How about we check in on the desires of our communities? How about we recognize that certain behaviors are better than others? Having a loving marriage where you are open to the possibility of life, and when you do that thing that married couples do, it's actually loving and produces children. That's actually better than, whips and chains or whatever. That's better than random hookups. That's better than strange arrangements that involve like 3 dudes, 5 chicks, and a billy goat or whatever, modern people do today. There are better and worse ways to engage with our sexuality, which is an important part of human nature. There is such a thing as sexual ethics and morality, and we ought to encourage certain behaviors and discourage others. That's what is underlying all of this Andrew Tate stuff. Because if the debate just remains, hey, Andrew Tate did these depraved things and it wasn't consensual, versus Andrew Tate did these depraved things, but the girl was consenting, the debate's not going to go anywhere, because the people who recognize that this kinds of behavior is just vile and despicable are going to say, well, the woman couldn't really consent because she was too young, or she was too dumb, or she was too helpless, or she was too vulnerable, or she didn't speak the right language, or what. You can find a million excuses, and they're all kind of somewhat persuasive, but they're ultimately missing the point. The thing is, nobody, consensual or not, should be engaging in this kind of behavior. Because the very notion of consent is problematic, to use a favorite term of the left. The very notion of consent is problematic because when our wills become compromised by ignorance or by vice and giving into temptation, then we can't really consent. Just like the Hunter Biden can't really consent to smoking the 5th crack pipe. He's an addict. He's compromised his intellect and his will. Certainly his will, and by engaging in sin, that clouds his intellect. So even the very notion of consent in a society that's convulsed by grave mortal sin all the time is a dubious concept. You want to criticize Tate all day, but do it for the right reasons and apply it evenly. That was a good clip. Now stop, ring the bell, subscribe. See you next time.